I think the first thing that I'll say is that the other title for this could be the art of embodiment. Because really when I talk about spaciousness, that's really what I'm talking about.
It's Retreat and Grow Rich, the podcast. I'm Darla LeDoux, best-selling author, coach, and retreat leader, and I'm on a mission to normalize transformation on the planet, one intimate retreat at a time. This show's dedicated to the coaches, consultants, healers, leaders, and light workers who are here to hold space for the truth that transforms lives and get paid for it. Expert retreat and business tips, strategies, stories, and magic. It's your weekly mini retreat delivered right to your ears. Let's do this. Hello and welcome to this episode of Retreat and Grow Rich, the podcast. I'm Darla LeDoux. I am your host for this episode. I'm really excited to be here interviewing Samantha Wallen. Samantha is the founder of Write in Power. I'm going to tell you a bit about her in just a moment. This is part of our Rich Revolution series. Rich, as you know by now, if you've been listening, is an acronym. It stands for right-brained, intuitive, connected, and heart-centered. And this series, for me personally, is about encouraging you, the listener, to trust your rich skills, to trust that your intuition, your creativity, your ability to put the pieces together in a way that might not look linear or traditional, and to really value those skills, that you have a greater courage to use those skills in the world, to talk about them, to not have it be your best kept secret, but to actually bring those forward in the world. More money in the hands of entrepreneurs who are doing this heart-centered work makes an impact. This is how we make an impact in the world. So I'm super excited to talk with Sam about this. She is incredibly passionate about making an impact in the world. And today we'll be exploring the art of spacious leadership. Spaciousness, well, I'm going to ask you, Sam, what that's about for you. But for me, that is a key way that we continue to cultivate and develop these skills that maybe weren't traditionally valued, but are becoming more and more valuable in society right now. So Samantha Wallen is an MFA. She's a poet, writer, writing and book coach, a purpose match mentor and consultant. She's also the founder and CEO of Write in Power, which offers transformative writing workshops, retreats, private coaching, and is totally designed to awaken your voice, heal your spirit, create your content for change, and clarify your deep purpose so you can express it more fully on and off the page. I have had the pleasure of watching Sam in action, and she's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for taking time to be here.
Thank you for having me, Darla.
Yeah.
Glad to be here. Yeah.
So let's just start out, Sam. Tell folks a little bit about your journey to Write in Power.
Okay. Let's see. It's a long journey, but what I'll say about it is that basically I had a realization that everyone's story has a deep thread of meaning for them personally. And when you tap into that, when you write into that and use words and language to articulate that, there's a different way that you get to see the arc of your own life and your own journey, and embrace that more fully and find a sense of the deeper purpose. And so that was my initial impulse, was to just create, writing is my modality for accessing that deeper sense of the meaning of my own life. And I know that other people enjoy that. And so that was really that spark of really wanting people to be able to tell their stories and the power of their story, and what comes through when you get out of your own way and actually let yourself and your life express. And as you know, I've said a lot, write what wants to be written. And there's a lot that comes with that. So I've learned a lot. You'll probably hear some of that along the way today, but I've learned a lot about really the scope and depth of what that means. That isn't just about writing a book or writing your content for change. That actually becomes the bonus. I've really learned what you produce is the bonus to the journey you embark on to have a deeper understanding of your life and its full expression and expressing it.
Why is that so important? I mean, I love that you know, what you write is just a bonus. Why is that work of actually writing what wants to be written so important?
In my own experience and what I've seen with my clients is that when you do that work of writing more deeply into your life and into what wants to come through you, into your story, there's a sense of visibility that happens, that where you get to see what you might not normally see. You know, we're almost always so forward looking.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity to actually pause and gather. And in fact, I recently came across the you know, the deeper root of the word art, like to, you know, art as in to create art. And that is to gather things together.
Wow.
And so I think that in that way, you gather things together so that you can see it more fully, touch into it, hold it, you know, have a deeper sense of visibility for yourself and with others. Like that's a real key part that I've come to, that it's not just about doing your own writing by yourself to yourself. That's important. That's one aspect. But the second aspect is actually sharing it, having it be visible, you know, being, you know, seen with your story, because when that happens, people get to see themselves more clearly and you get to see yourself more clearly. And I think there's a tremendous amount of healing that happens there too. There's a great quote I have on my email that's from a client, and I'm going to paraphrase it now because I don't have it exactly, but she says, you know, perhaps this book can be a place where I archive the pain and wisdom of my life and put it into something small enough to hold in the human hand.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up, I think, because when you do that, you get to experience yourself and your own life in a different kind of way.
That's amazing. I have so many questions from that. You know, one of the things I want to highlight, and I hope it's okay that I share this. One of the things I love about you is that you're always bringing the definition of language forward. Like, we use words, but we don't, like, I had no idea that's what art meant, or the origination of art. That's amazing. And it brings so much power, to use your language, to our words, because you're constantly looking at, well, what does that really mean? Right? What is the deeper meaning in that? And it makes me think of when you shared a definition at our event. Do you remember that?
The inspire, or no, I'm not sure which one. I'm always sharing definitions, but
I know. Well, I think it might've been inspire. But I'm thinking about, you know, you shared, and then you shared like, oh my gosh, I thought I shouldn't share this. I thought I shouldn't go to the microphone and share like my knowledge and what it is that I know, because that might, you know, whatever. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, that, and it was the word inspire, which was a big learning moment for me, because you had brought it forward and I went to the mic, and I knew, I'd known for a long time, and I knew that the root of that word means of the breath. And in that moment, you'd asked a question, I can't remember what it was, and we read a little something, and you said, what does this mean to you in relation to this word? And of the breath, I couldn't quite make it work in that moment. So I got up and I was like, well, inspire is like of the spirit. And you often hear that, in spirit. And I didn't share it being of the breath. And when I sat down, I think you might've even spoken to that afterward. And when I sat down and you went forward with it and articulated more of that connection, I was like, why in the world didn't I say that? And I spent like 2 days, you know, berating myself with that inner critic
For
of
holding
like,
back.
Yeah, for holding back and for not just bringing that forward. And yeah, there's a lot I could say about just the root of the word, the power there that maybe we'll get into with your questions, but
yeah, but and a lot of your work with your clients is helping them see places where they might hold back.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's, and I know this from watching your work evolve and my own journey of writing, and there's whatever we think we should write about. And then there's your perspective of we need to write what wants to be written. And that's where this idea of really being tuned in and allowing that to flow is so important and so valuable. So, your work helps people write what wants to be written. And I think that story is an example of like holding back what wants to come through.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I even had a deeper clarification of this, recently in my weekly writing circle that I have. And I've been talking a lot lately about creative joy, and what that means. My most recent newsletter was talking a bit about that, and that being my commitment for myself this year is this creative joy. And one of the people in my writing circle, well, I gave people a prompt to write from, and I used Dr. Seuss, which was kind of fun and light, and wanted to see where it would take people. And what arose out of that was that there was this feeling or this impression that creative joy came from being lighthearted and doing, something silly. And part of my point was this sense that we often take ourselves way too seriously, and we need some of that lightheartedness and joy. But what it really highlighted that I think is so important to articulate about what creative joy is not the content. It's not writing light. It's not keeping subjects positive or spiritual or anything like that. It's actually what you're saying. It's actually letting what wants to come out, because one of the participants in my group kind of went down a dark path and, had this beautiful line in there it was very captivating about, a brother telling or a sister telling a brother, like, why don't you go out and lay down in the middle of the street and get, run over by a car. And it was a kind of an abrupt and startling line, but in the writing, she talked about later how she censored herself to go in a different direction, because she was like, oh wait, this is going someplace dark, this is not joyful. And we brought it back to really saying, no, that's not what I'm saying about creative joy. In fact, today, this same person in my group wrote a piece that was like, had a lot of swear words in it and a lot of anger in it. And I was like, and we all could feel when she read it, this like a flow and this sort of release that happened within the writing itself. And as she read it, we all felt it. And I was like, that is creative joy. It's actually even bumping up against the thing that challenges us, or that we're pushing back against, that we think we shouldn't be feeling or saying what we have to say about it, and using it to actually really say the truth and use the swear words or get angry or go in that dark place of, a dark fairy tale or whatever it is, because that's what wants to come forward.
You said earlier, when you put your timeline of your story in writing and something you can hold in your hand, you get to see what you might not normally see about your story. And you just use the word truth. Like when we're writing what wants to come through, there's a truth in it. And as you know, one of the things I teach is how transformation works. And the clear pivot for transformation, and where when we can see the new truth, that's actually where the transformation starts. When we can see it, truth, and validate it, that's where that shift happens. And that's what I'm hearing in what you're sharing. And you used two words that I thought were awesome: pause and gather. And I want to talk a little bit about the pause and why the pause is so important in being able to really see and validate that truth. is the pause so important? We're here to talk about the art of spaciousness, right? As a valuable, tangible offering and something that we need and something that we want in our lives. But a lot of times we don't give space. We don't let ourselves pause. And I know this is a journey you've been on recently of really giving space and giving time to pause. So what's so important and valuable about that?
Yeah. Okay, there's a lot that I'd want to say about this, so let me pause and feel what feels most important. Well, I think the first thing that I'll say is that the other title for this could be the art of embodiment, because really when I talk about spaciousness, that's really what I'm talking about. And this idea of pause, and what I mean by that in terms of embodiment, is we often think about pausing to tune in more deeply to our bodies, for example, like listen to our bodies. And what I'm really coming to understand about the pauses in my life, and as I work with clients, is it's not so much about tuning into listening to our bodies. It's actually using our bodies to listen to our life. And there's a very distinct but subtle difference there. And for me, the first pause is this pause of actually, the work I've been doing for myself very strongly in the last year in particular. It's been a long journey, but I've come to a different understanding in the last year, which was a pause I took in my business in a way, and in sort of the way that I was being visible with my work and in the world. And what was at the center of that was getting into my body. And there's a way, and this isn't just a concept, and this has been the revolution for me, actually, because as you know, I love thinking. I love ideas. I love, pondering and connecting things all together, and concepts and abstractions and all those things. I love them to death. And I also have come to a deep understanding and recognition that only serves me so much, and that the breathing reality of my life actually happens in my body when I lay down on the floor and do some somatic practices that are part of the lineage that I am in, which is a Tibetan Buddhist tradition it's called Vajrayana Buddhism, which is called the practicing lineage. And it's not, you don't have to be a Buddhist to subscribe to this, but it's the idea that you're really making space for the chaos of your own life and aliveness. And when anybody sits down to pause in meditation or to pause in their life, the first thing you experience is chaos, most likely. I mean, that's often why people don't do it. It's often why we're so distracted, and why we're doing things all the time or moving to the next thing. And is like, when you pause, there's an expectation that you're supposed to be spacious and feel good and calm and at ease. And sometimes that can happen right away. But most often you're going to encounter a lot of chaos, a lot of thinking, a lot of your mind every place, like your body, and aches and tensions and all of these things. And like, that's where our life really lives. And so that's true on a physical level. And that's where, for me, that's at the forefront. So the more that I do that with my physical body, the more I'm able to be finding space in my life, in my work, in writing, because writing is secondary. It moves up to the conceptual mind when you start working with language. And so there's there's different kinds of pauses that you need to take in order to actually touch reality in your life in a much deeper way. And that's true of in your physical sense, and it's true in your story, even when you're writing, where some of the realizations and the truths that come from doing that kind of work are not great. Like you start to see, I'm working, you know, with one, well, actually I'll speak to myself first, but in this last year of realizing like how much I live in my head and how much I want to manage and control things, how much, you know, for a client I'm working with right now, as she's working on her story, and I'm having her do some embodiment practices as well. She's having to actually see the fog of disillusion that she both created and has been living in for a really long time. And like, that's not always an inspirational thing, right? So that sense of pause is to give room to kind of be in the muck of that. Because I know you talk about transformation a lot, but you know, to the root of that word, transform really means to move into beauty. And the one last thing I'll say about this here is that I recently did a workshop with Stephen Jenkinson, who's this amazing man who does a lot of etymology. He works around death and talks just a lot about a lot of things, really great stuff. But I heard him tell a story. I won't tell the story, but what came from it is this idea that beauty is not something that's inevitable or that's an inherent characteristic of something. Beauty comes into being precisely because of our willingness not to have it, which seems like a bit of a contradiction.
Yeah, you might need more about that.
What he's saying in there is that beauty actually happens through the course of time in our lives unfolding. In the sense that, what does he say? I have a note here on this because I'm still trying to work with this myself, but he said, beauty is a consequence of our willingness to do without it. And we are the heirs of beauty, not the creators of it. And the story, just to help ground this a little bit, is of a Zen monastery, basically called a woman artist, and said, we want you to come paint the ceiling in this new amazing center that we're building, and you have complete freedom to do whatever you want. And she was like, what? You know, and she's like, well, what if people don't like it? And he's like, well, it's already been decided that you're going to do it. And it's probably already true that some people won't like it. But it's the test of time that will bring forward the sense of its beauty, because over the years, and when the light comes in and the sun hits it, and people have this experience of being in regular relationship to this creation, whether they like it or not,
right?
That's when this sense of beauty arises.
So because of all of the experiences you have connected to that thing,
yeah,
you feel the beauty of it.
Yeah, and they're the experiences of for in that case, times when you're sitting there and you're cramped up and you hate meditation and it's awful and you think, what the hell am I doing here? And you might catch the light of the blue color in that painting from this woman's creation, and there's some moment of transmission that happens. And that's where the beauty comes from, not just from, is this beautiful or is it not? Do I like it or do I not like it? Which is sort of what I'm saying then about our lives and this sense of pause, because when we pause, we're allowing ourselves to let the full experience of our life, the cramping back and the beauty of the light with the blue, come in, and together those things create this sense of beauty. And that's what it means to transform, in the sense that like we come to a moment of wholeness through being directly in our lives and being there to see it.
I'm thinking of, you used the word grief when you were talking about his quote. And as you know, I'm in the midst, as we're recording this, this won't be airing, at the moment I'm recording, but tomorrow is the viewing for my father-in-law and Friday is his celebration of life. So he passed what feels like an eternity ago now, but last Saturday. And there's so many parallels that I see just even in the human life, right? Because there are so many parts of him, I will cry most likely, that I can see and observe, like the way the lessons I've gotten and the parts of him that I've integrated. And then there's also things that's like, man, he really had that wrong in life, and it's so, to me, that's beautiful to be able to see both sides and to feel and observe the beauty of the small moments of things that at the time didn't feel like anything. And looking back, it's like, oh, isn't it interesting how he modeled that or how I got that? So that's my connection personally to what you're sharing.
Yeah, that's really lovely. And that's a perfect, another perfect in the moment articulation, I think, of what beauty is and how it only arrives over time. And it actually,
my makeup, Sam.
You still look beautiful, Darla.
Thanks.
Even more so. But it only arrives also over time. And it actually is only arriving because of an ending and because of a limit. And that is another key thing I'm working with. And death, the reality of death and the reality of endings and the reality of loss and grief. Those are the things that actually shape beauty and how we see it in a moment.
Yeah. And I'm feeling into the spaciousness also because I did a little Facebook Live about this. The timing of the loss of my father-in-law was so divine and interesting because he'd been diagnosed with cancer 4 years ago, and 2 years ago it was like kind of on the edge and then in total remission, and then suddenly re-diagnosed and passed within a week. So super interesting.
Very fast. Yeah, at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was scheduled to be at an event and I flew home. So I had time off. Kimmy, who my wife, was scheduled to shoot an event this week and it was canceled. So she was off. So we've had a lot of spaciousness to be in the memory and the experience of this and in connection around this experience that maybe in normal life we wouldn't have had. And you talked about the chaos, and it's like there's beauty, and it's like I feel all the sweetness of this time that we have. And also, like I said, it feels like an eternity ago, and like, oh, could this just come to a close already, this, right? Because we're in this extended pause. So what have you noticed about the pause and the space and how our ego relates to that? Because it's very much an ego thing of like, I'd like to get back to my comfort zone of my normal life now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one.
And there's no thought, gratefully, I've done enough work that there's no thought of like, oh, I can't afford this time off or I should be working. Like, I don't have that. It's really just like a comfort zone, right? Like there's a certain rhythm to how I do life that's been disrupted in a positive way, but there's this urge to get back to the comfort zone. So when you're working with writers and you're having them do embodiment practices, what comes up?
Well, there's a lot of resistance, both with myself. I'll say about myself and with people I work with. Before that, I want to just say something. This is new to me too, in learning a deeper meaning of the word awake. And this is from Stephen Jenkinson also, and it just feels appropriate to share right now in terms of what you're talking about with your with Kimmy's dad and stuff as well. And so the root of the word, it's an Anglo-Saxon word, and so the a actually is a preposition versus in Latin and Greek it's often a negation of what comes after it. So in this sense, a means in.
Okay.
And it means in wake. And so wake is basically the thing that arises or is detonated by our demise. It's what we have as a funeral. Like you're in a wake time right now, right? Literally. And it's also this sense of the passage through water, and what's left behind. And so the way that he describes this is that to be awake is to be gathered into the web of consequence, all the done and undone things of a life. And that it's not about mindfulness in the same ways that we think about it. It's not about spiritual achievedness. It's really to be gathered into the web of consequence. And so I love that because one, it just sort of blows my mind, and it's not how I've thought about that word.
Yeah.
But in what you're saying and where you are right now, that's it. Like you're in this web of consequence.
Yeah. Of
your own life and Clay's life and what it means.
Yeah.
And this is the art of spaciousness, Darla, really. Like the ability to be in it and kind of hang out there without necessarily needing to move on to the next thing. And it doesn't mean that you won't and you're not inspired to, because the reality is you're going to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
But like this, what you just shared a moment ago about this beauty of Clay's life that also is tied to the, human frailties and, failings or whatever you might want to call it. Like you're getting room to actually let that in, and who knows what that consequence is going to be for you.
Yeah.
And how this translates then in terms of working with clients, I don't fully know, honestly. But what I'll say, for myself and what I'm seeing with clients in my interpretation is it's like the work I'm doing with people and the work I'm doing with myself is creating the conditions to come back into this sense of the beauty of life, to be here for it, to be present for it. And some days I'm not doing that, and some days I wake up and I don't want to write, or a client doesn't want to write or do whatever we have to do, and I don't feel inspired and I feel tired and that inner critic's running and I want to go eat ice cream and Cheetos and stuff like that. And because I've been doing this work and because there's some level of awareness in my body around it, like one, I give myself some room and I'm like, okay, Sam, there that is. And like, I'm just going to eat this right now, and I let myself do it. But I also know that like, I have to return, and like, I'm creating conditions to let myself kind of go off the rails and give myself some permission for that, so that I can actually then come back and do what I'm here to do. And like, that's kind of the work and the skill of having some of that room and that flexibility for what's actually happening for you in the moment, which is maybe you don't feel so great and inspired, or you're ready to move on and get this over with. Well, okay, that gets to have some room. You might even like go off and do something else than sort of be with family or whatever it is. And
like
then,
recording podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But then you come back, and I think, the key here is with clients and with myself is like understanding what those core fundamental practices are for you in your life,
Yeah.
that you can keep returning to so that you can go off the rails. Because the egos, we don't get rid of the ego, and nor is that, I think, even the idea. It's like it comes in and it cramps things up, and there's that tension there. But when you give whatever's happening some room, that's when you can relax. And
you can actually have joy in ego.
Right.
Like, oh, isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And it moves through, it gets its due time also. That's the spaciousness is like whatever's happening gets its due time.
Yeah. Because what happens if it doesn't?
That's the question.
Yeah.
What would you think if you weren't having this time right now? Like what?
Well, it gets suppressed, right? It gets suppressed and stored in our system. It comes out in unhealthy ways. I think for me, it gets stored somewhere and creates funky energy that probably causes illness, various physical manifestations.
Yeah.
Because it needs to come out. It needs to be heard.
It does. And for me too, I notice more and more that then the hold gets even tighter and tighter and tighter, and it gets harder and harder to climb this, what seems like a big mountain, to get back to meditation practice or to writing practice or to whatever, because all of a sudden you feel like, oh crap, I blew it. Or like, I'm so far away, I can't ever come back.
Yeah. Or I had a client I was working with who's like, I just need a sabbatical. And so giving herself full permission for a sabbatical, it lasted like a week. Right? Because then it was like, okay, I've given myself the space and I've been in the space and now I'm ready to create. Yeah. Versus like going, oh no, work through it. The space would never be there.
Right. Right.
And I find for myself, things never take as long as I'm afraid they will. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Especially the things we don't want to have to work with.
Yeah. It's like, okay, just be fully with it. And it might be as long as a walk to the beach and back, fully with it, and it moves through. But resisting it or feeling like there's no time to feel it or be with it, or it keeps going. Yeah. It perpetuates.
Yeah.
So something bubbled up for me, Sam, when you talked about the awake, what's left behind, the web of consequence. I feel like it's really interesting given what you said about, pause and gather and put this like story of your life into something you can hold in the palm of your hand. And the work of really helping people pause and gather and see what is in their story that maybe they've never seen because they haven't had the bird's eye view, right? That's how I think of it. Is like anything I'm going through in life, if it feels overwhelming or painful or whatever, like from the bird's eye view, it's like, oh, isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. Isn't that divine? Oh my goodness, look at how all those pieces came together to orchestrate this thing on my behalf. Like, amazing. But when in it, I can't see that, right? So you're helping people really get the bird's eye view to heal their life and to become awake to the consequence of the choices they've made. That's what I hear. I like that word consequence because really, and to cycle back to the anatomy of transformation that I teach, the truth that we become awake to is the consequence of how we've been being. Right? So when we get a new awareness, when we see something for what it is, when we've been maybe hiding from it or not making space for it or whatever, like what we're really seeing is the consequence of our way of being up until this point.
Yeah. I think the way that I've been, and this is kind of fresh for me too, in terms of thinking about this, being gathered into the web of consequence. I think for me, in terms of the experience, that yes, what you're saying I think is true when it comes to, gathering your book together and sort of seeing, this what I like to call the thread of purpose or meaning that's been living itself out through your life. And you have to pause and get that bird's eye view in order to see it. And I think what I'm feeling in relation to this word consequence right now is not even so much the consequence of choices, that's part of it, that it is, you know, our ways of being and the choices that we've made. But there's something deeper going on here that I can't fully put my finger on, which is the point, I think, which is that it's, because one of the things that Stephen Jenkins said in relationship to this, that if we are to be the sound of becoming awake or awakefulness would not be like a hallelujah. It would be a deep sob. And when I hear that, I think the deep sob is like, it's sort of those moments of surrender where it's not even so much about the choices you made or didn't make, but it's sort of like that wave of both sorrow and joy that releases itself. Like you might get in a sob, because sometimes I sob when I drive home and I see the sunset over the ocean. Like I'm just like burst into tears. And then sometimes I sob because I'm in deep pain for some reason. And like they both are the same gesture. And there's something about feeling that totality. And that's kind of how I'm interpreting the consequence, because, you know, I'm experiencing that in my life right now, of being in midlife and going through my children going, you know, well, I don't have an empty nest. I did for a couple months, but not so much now, but, you know, just kind of this transition. And there's a way that I'm feeling both the loss of what I thought was possible for myself in my life when I was 17 and like how I imagined myself to be. And then also this deep welcoming of the reality of what my life is. And there's a gap there sometimes. And sometimes there's not, in terms of like, well, this is just my life. Good, bad, whatever. Yes, I made these choices. What if I'd have made these other choices? But like, how can I just let it in? And that's how I'm experiencing consequence. And there's a way with, I think, in writing and with the book, that both of those things are happening, where back to the idea of the book being the bonus. It's not only the bonus, but it's also the thing you get to like let go into the wind. Because once you've sort of gathered your story to that point, you see that arc, that bird's eye view, your consequences and your choices and kind of all of it. There's a way that you get to like exhale, burn the book, publish it, let it go out into the world and take its own life on, because it will. You have no control over it at that point. There's a freedom then to receive whatever it is that wants to come in next, that you ultimately realize you have no control over, even with the choices you make sometimes. Your life is going to unfold as your life. And there's an acceptance of that.
Yeah, that's kind of leading to the question that's been bubbling is, what is what's the point? And I mean that in a way to kind of anchor this for people, right? Yeah. Like what do we get from allowing ourselves to write what wants to be written, to be with it, to take the space, to experience the beauty? I know that inherent in the journey is a letting go of attachment to what's the point. So I'm aware that it's a little bit of a circular question. But what's changed in your life or the lives of your clients by allowing the space to let life be lived through you? It's like there's a lot of different ways that you've phrased it, you know, like let your body live life, like let it come through. But there's this way in which there's an allowing of life to happen. And there's ups and downs in what I'm hearing and my own experience. Why is it worth it? Why is this work so important that, you know, for as an individual and as humanity?
I think my first answer to that question is that when we allow that and we actually are in tune with it rather than resisting it or trying to control it or manage it, we're actually deeply alive, because that's the reality of life, is this constant vacillation of things. And so we're not disconnected and disassociated, and because when we are disconnected from our bodies, or we're disconnected from the reality of change or the reality of death or the reality of our own brilliant and tragic truths, we are in a state of anxiety and not enoughness, a state of deep and perpetual hunger, which I think is part of this incessant need to be better or for growth.
Or eat ice cream.
Or eat ice cream, you know, or yeah, exactly. Or yeah, we're filling something that's this kind of deep, profound level of anxiety that I look around more and at young people and all people that is heightened in a really extreme kind of way. Yeah. And one thing that speaks to this is I read this embodiment manifesto by a guy named Philip Shepard, who does coaching and things. And one of the things that he said is that, you know, when you're disconnected, so when you're disconnected from your body, and here I'm meaning your physical body, the body of your life, you are disconnecting from the richest and most tangible reality of your being. And so we habitually are in the habit of cutting ourselves off from that. Yeah. But when we don't, and that in and of itself creates that hunger and that anxiety, because what he says, and this is, I believe to be true, what we really long for, the security that we're looking for ultimately, is the security of our own beingness. And our own beingness is this chaotic jumble of joys and sorrows and inspirations and tragedies and death and life. And so when we're connected to that, we actually experience that sense of relief and relaxation. And so as simple as that, like, I'm relaxing about my damn life. Yeah.
That is enough. With the number of people who, you know, are on medication for anxiety, you know, let alone experiencing it. I know for me, there was a point where I became aware of a low-grade anxiety that just was like normal. I didn't even know it was there for so long because it was such a part of everyday life. And it's part of the water we swim in. So the more of us who can take this journey to create space, to be with what is true and release some of that, it has a ripple effect on the people around us.
Yes, absolutely. It does. Yeah.
So just to kind of close it up, I know you personally have hosted retreats. This is the Retreat and Grow Rich podcast. You've attended retreats. And we're talking about, you know, really creating space. And there's the obvious link that getting out of your environment and into a retreat container automatically gives you a certain level of space. Now, obviously it depends on the design and the intention and, you know, the location and all of that. What's one piece of advice you would give to someone who's a retreat leader who really wants to have their participants feel spacious?
Well, I would say two things. The first one is for that retreat leader to develop their own practice of embodiment or spaciousness for themselves and to commit to it. Because as you say, quite often you know, how you're being is what is actually transmitted more than anything that you're saying.
Yeah.
And so you need to have that for yourself in whatever that looks like for you. The second is within any retreat, and even within my own life, but I build in now what I call spacious wandering time. And the spacious wandering time is like, there's no freaking agenda of any kind. There's no agenda to rest or work or do this or do that or to break through or to transform or to learn or any of it. It's actually like, what is it like to just have this space? And maybe you feel moved to take a nap. Maybe you feel moved to go for a walk. Maybe you feel moved to go, you know, do something else or to do some writing, but there's no agenda to it.
Yeah.
And we just don't get that. And we don't have a lot of that in our lives. And it's really difficult to do at first because there's that we feel that anxiety that we were just talking about. That comes to the surface first. So if you can kind of
especially when you don't have a lot of that time, there's the immediate, how do I make the best use of this time?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So building that
I've watched that happen so often for people. But it had no point. At one of my retreats, I was so nervous that the participants would be upset. Like, what am I learning here? You know, what's the point of this? And I worked with one client who, you know, Kate, who created as part of her retreat a spa visit on the first day, first thing, like go have a mud bath, right? Intentionally, so people could really see their context for what's valuable and what's important. And she did have one person who refused to go was upset, like,
oh, because they didn't see the value.
This isn't work.
Yeah.
I'm here to work on my business. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we could have a whole nother conversation about that in and of itself. But honestly, I think that's what we're here to unravel, is this incessant need to have a point to everything, because then we don't ever create that space and we don't ever connect to ourselves and to our life.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so much, Samantha, for being here and for your brilliance. It's been awesome to be in your energy field, and I know others feel that as well. For people who want to take a next step with you, who are ready to write what wants to be written, you have a really cool exercise that's a free gift. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. And thank you, Darla, for having me. It's been really great. I love being in conversation and sharing these things. So this has been really great. So my free gift is my signature one-word exercise, the power of the word. As you heard, I love words and the roots of words. Find that process to be very enlightening. And it's an exercise that really helps get you out of the way, like we've been talking about, to write what wants to be written. And it's fun, and all you need is one word, and all you need is 15 minutes. So you can get that.
You can create that much space after this conversation.
Yeah, exactly. You can use that. I just had a client talk about the spaciousness that she's experienced from writing, and I didn't even prompt her. So yes, so that free gift, you can go to my website, which is Write in Power, WRITEIN.
It's behind you on your wall.
Oh yes, it is on my wall. writeinpower.com/free gift. Or if you just go to writeinpower.com, actually the first initial thing you see on the homepage is the sign up for that one word exercise.
Awesome.
Well. Yeah.
Thank you, Sam. Big hugs.
Thank you, Darla. You too. And good luck the rest of this week. My
Thank you. Thank you. This was great to set a context for the rest of my week.
Good. All right. Thanks, Darla. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Have you been called to integrate transformational retreats into the way you work with your clients? Do you want to be known as a masterful leader of experiences that permanently shift your client's mindset and energy so their results with you quantum leap? Would you like to receive great money for those magical and unique parts of you that you've likely been sneaking into your work for free because you're not sure how to market them? We're now taking applications for March in the Beautifully Aligned Retreat Leader Collective. Spots are limited in this 12-month container of support for your business vision. You will rock the front of the room with the latest techniques and skills and have the inside scoop on venues and creating amazing experiences. You'll learn to streamline your business model and marketing so you aren't always in search of your next client. And you'll connect at a heart level to others on this journey who speak your language and uplift your work in their communities. Visit alignedentrepreneurs.com/collective and apply today.